Hey everyone, this is behind the song for Diamonds in the Coal, one of the earliest songs that I wrote. Diamonds in the Coal is from an album called Diamonds in the Coal, the title track, from 1992. So we're looking at, whatever that is, that's 30 years from this year. So I remember the date, maybe late summer. So maybe we're coming up in exactly 30 years soon. Anyway, Diamonds in the Coal was a song that I wrote. It was as a story song. It was the first story song that I can remember ever writing, like personally, like first story song I ever wrote. I was always a big fan of the band and The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down and Acadian Driftwood and Johnny Horton, Battle of New Orleans, North to Alaska, songs like that had some sort of historical, story attached to them, and they would kind of tell the tale in song. So that was Diamonds in the Coal was my first attempt to do something like that from my own perspective. So yeah, and I ended up doing a lot more of that later. Not tons, but I definitely wrote more story songs as time went on. So what I chose, I kind of wanted to choose something that was connected to something that I knew, something that was connected to me. And I grew up in north central PA and kind of coal country, farmlands, coal, like strip mining, where I eventually moved to was northeast PA, which is Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and this is all kind of underground, settled to be, underground mining, and that whole part of the Pennsylvania coal region. But up by me, largely at this point in time when I wrote that song was all strip mines. What was left of it, which used to be bigger in the past years. So basically I wanted to write a song about this guy that was, part of that world. Part of that was his job. It was like a coal miner, and the Agnes flood came through, and this was actually a true story because I remember as a kid, Agnes flood came through that area and blew out a lot of the railroad bridges that the train used to get shipments and coal back and forth, and that was kind of it for a lot of that. And then they were hauling it by truck, but definitely things changed at that point. And I was very small when the Hurricane Agnes, when that flood came through Pennsylvania. 50 years ago, that was last month in June, so we're in July now. But so that was a big moment. I remember the water. I remember my father talking about the railroad bridges being taken out. I remember the train used to go by the area where I got the bus in the morning to go to school, and then the train wasn't there anymore because the railroad bridges were gone and they never rebuilt them. And so when I got, to the age where I was seriously writing songs and wanted to do a history song, that was kind of the topic I picked, was, the coal region, the Agnes flood. And I kind of put the whole thing together like that. Which, to this day, as far as the battles are concerned, is fairly identifiable. I certainly think people would consider us, our vibe Pennsylvanian, you know what I mean? Like we identify with us as a Pennsylvania band, even though our lead singer Pete's from New Jersey, but the rest of the band's all from the coal regions and central PA, and here, there, and everywhere. So that's been a thing that kind of held on. When we made the artwork for the album, we went to a historical society, I think in Tamaqua, Pennsylvania, which is not that far away from where our drummer Ronnie lived, where he grew up. And I remember we went there and got pictures and information and tried to do a little research and kind of give the whole thing a little bit of weight and a little bit of credibility. So that was kind of the genesis and the songwriting part of that song. So yeah, just kind of telling a tale, putting a little conflict in there, kind of connecting it to history. In my case, connecting it to something that I knew, and that's what came out from there. On the recording, basically it's just the five of us, the Badleys, the original five guys, played on this track. The whole thing's kind of just based around a simple. This little kind of riff. I kind of a little bit based it off of there's an REM song that my original band, my first band, played. It was like Disturbance at the Heron House. It was like it had some sort of that kind of a vibe too. It wasn't a rip off, but it was the same vibe, So that was in my early forays into REM. That was an early favorite. So I kind of wanted to get a riff that felt like that one. That song's I think a little bit faster than Diamonds in the Coal, but basic vibe. So basically the whole song is just us, five of us playing, and we did the basic tracks in Hoboken, New Jersey, at a place called the Waterfront, which was Lenny Kravitz's studio, and then we brought all the tracks back to Pennsylvania and finished out the record here, which was done at the building where the Badleys bass player Paul now owns. So yeah, full circle for that for us. The middle section has a violin in it, and if any of you follow the band these days, you know we often have a violinist with us, Nike Van Wyk. I'm not even sure Nike was born. He was born, but he was pretty small, 4 or 5 years old when we did that song. But the violinist on that song, on that recording, his name's David Rose, and David Rose was an excellent player, an amazing player, and he had his band, David Rose Band, and I was making a record with them at the same studio, and it was kind of like he was there, and I asked him to hop on the song and play a little solo, and he played on Diamonds in the Coal. He played on what's the other song on that record? Spending My Inheritance on the Diamonds in the Coal album. He played on that song as well. So yeah, so that was our first foray into adding violin, like a fiddle player to that material, which worked, was excellent for like my style and the band's style and what where we were coming from. So yeah, that was a vibe that carried on to this day. But David was like I said, he was in the studio. I was working with him. I was making his record as an engineer and producer, which was one of the early records that I was doing. So then we just kind of commandeered him to come in and play on this track. A great thing, one thing about a lot of people recording at home and emailing things around is it's great to be able to work with anyone that's anywhere without having all of them be in your presence. But there's definitely a cool thing that happens with a recording studio as incubator, in a lot of records, where you see cameos that appear on various albums. This guy played on this, or this guy sang a background part. A lot of them are just kind of accidents that they happen to be working in the same studio. They were next door, and they popped on over and laid down a part, and it's simple as that. In my experience, sometimes those things are planned, but just as often they're not. It's just that you're just in the same physical space as someone else that you want to play on something, and you just say, hey, can you come over here and hop on this tune? And that was the same impetus for me to learn how to play other instruments like mandolin or dulcimer or whatever. It was just kind of like I'm in the studio, and I want to be able to put these colors on a track, and I want to be able to put these things on a track. So I don't know, have anybody at 2 a.m. in Northumberland, Pennsylvania that I can call to play dulcimer. So I picked it up myself and started learn a part or two. So and then you can get those colors on just by being in a studio and having the basic working ability to be able to add these overdubs yourself or somebody's around. So yeah, so as a vibe thing and as a as I don't know, just a cool thing to have is to have that incubator thing where there's people coming in and out and of a recording studio, and you can kind of get a much richer experience recording than you can get just doing it at home or doing it, just doing it on a computer by yourself. And I much love that. One little nugget here was when we were working on the Diamonds in the Coal thing, and Dave came in and played. We had this little solo section. It was like, and it was funny because if you play if you don't play the third of the chord, you can kind of misinterpret whether it's a major chord or a minor chord. So it's like it really was a major chord, which the third would be the C sharp, and Dave interpreted it as a minor. So he played a part that kind of went with this. And it was kind of funny because it's really technically wrong, but I don't know if on the tracks, if any of us, we're all kind of playing an A chord, but I don't know if any of us were playing the third while he was playing. We were playing the major third while he was playing the minor third, which would sound horrible. But I don't think any of us did, and he just kind of took an interpretation of it in a different way. I think I had that on the... right here. Hearing it, and that was not how we were hearing it, but that's the way it came out. We just let him roll with it, and it was like, all right. So it was all cool. We're currently remixing and kind of remastering and re-releasing this album because it's like I said, it's 30 years this year for that album. So we're kind of gonna give it a little spit shine and re-release that album. So when we bring up the tracks, we'll be able to see if any of us actually played that major against the minor thing and made it sound odd. One more thing about the incubator thing, there was another song on that album called Next Big Thing. Next Big Thing that our pal Doug Kennedy played on, who would go on to be in a band called Isle of Q, who was on Universal. And we all kind of started at the same studio and we're friends and interns at the studio. I know Pete interned at the studio. Doug was an early intern. Our bass player Paul was an intern for me 6-8 months after I started working there. And so all these friendships and all these friendships and collaborative relationships started all just at this little studio, so once again, just another testimony to the power of cooperation and the power of the incubator to make good music. And I think that's about it for Diamonds in the Coal. Like I said, there's another version of the song on a little EP we did in my basement years ago. The name of the EP is called Leaning on the Days Parade, and that one's all banjo driven. In a lot of ways, I like the banjo driven version better than the original version. Kind of seemed to give it a little bit more of a rustic feel. So you can check that out. I know both the banjo version and the original album version are on Spotify or Amazon Music and all that. So if you want to check any of that out, and look for the newest version of that. It's going to be coming out here probably in the fall. And the new Spit Shine version of Diamonds in the Coal. It was my first story song, and that's how it went down. There you go. Have a great 4th of July, everybody.